So that was the goal, is to not just ask them about it, but to take what they say, put it into practice on screen so that people can see it. And so it's a much more direct, I think, way of kind of satirizing these ideas, maybe even than we did in What is a Woman?
Hello, everybody. I had the opportunity today to talk to Matt Walsh of What is a Woman fame. In any case, as many of you know, unless you live under a rock, the issue of racism has raised its ugly head in a massive way once again in our culture since about 2015, mostly because people badly educated at idiot universities have made that the center point of their propagandistic fulmination, much to the decrement of interpersonal relationships across the West, and certainly relationships between the different ethnicities and racial groups. And we also talked about Matt's conservative ethos, right? And how did those two things tie together? Well, people are beating the anti-racist drum, I suppose, because they're looking for meaning in their life. At least that's part of the reason, to the degree that they're just not exploiting the situation. And we talked about sources of deep meaning. And for Matt and for myself, the meanings in our life have really come from our dedication to our wives and our families, our kids and our grandkids. And in my case, because I'm older than Matt.
Yeah, we do. We have movies coming out September 13th. Am I Racist is the title. And tickets are on pre-sale right now. We opened up pre-sale about a week ago. It's already going, really well on the pre-sale for the tickets, which is important because that, determines in large part how many theaters actually show the movie. So people are responding in a big way, and I'm excited about it.
Am I Racist? September 13th. Well, I suppose we could cut right to the punchline. We'll start with you. Are you racist?
Well, that feels like a spoiler, I guess. I mean, look, one thing we learn in the movie is that I'm white. So I guess the answer is yes. That is how they define racism on the anti-racist side, that if you're white, you're inherently racist. And if you're not, then you're not racist, no matter what you say or do. So from their perspective, the answer is yes. And it's actually, unlike What is a Woman, the first movie that we made, obviously, that was a question that they didn't want to answer. It was hard for them to answer. The idea of being unfaithful to my wife, I find it's a horror show when I think about it. Like, every aspect of that is a horror show. Okay. Nothing about it I find even remotely tempting.
Okay, why? Why is it a horror show? Why is it a horror show when you think about it?
Well, because everything you're bringing into your life is terrible. You're bringing lies and deception and betrayal into your life. I also happen to love my wife very much. Loving, I believe, is willing the good of the other. That is very much not willing what is good for her or my family. Every part of it, I don't see any advantage. I don't see anything about it that's appealing at all. And it's the same if I were to imagine having never been married at all and being single right now. And then at least you don't have the betrayal and all of that. But that also I find incredibly unappealing. I quite literally thank God every day that I'm married. I look at people who aren't, and I feel sorry for them, especially men. And as you point out, there are men who want to be, they just don't have the opportunity. And I feel an immense amount of sympathy for them. I would hate to be in their position. I don't want to lay it on them even thicker if they're watching right now, but I feel for them. I'm incredibly happy to be married all the time. And I guess the reason is, it's only difficult to answer the question because the reasons are really infinite in a lot of ways, but it brings meaning into my life every day that wouldn't be there without it. It brings purpose. There are people in my life who I can love in a way that if they weren't there, I just wouldn't. I know that it's just a different kind of love that I have for my own kids and my own wife, that if I didn't have them, I wouldn't have any opportunity for that kind of love, either to give it or to receive it. As I said, to me, not having that is nothing but pure horror. I see no advantage of it.
Right. So you outlined you outlined two dimensions there. You said that, if you took the short-term mating strategy route, let's say that would introduce all sorts of deception and lies and betrayal and brokenness into your family. So that's sort of on the hell side.
I look at my life up to the age of 25, and I see all of that as basically childhood. I look at myself at 22, and it's like I might as well have been 12 in a lot of ways, because for me, adulthood started once I was actually a husband and then a father. And I think, and also for me, even it's interesting because in the culture, we're always told that having a family is going to prevent you from being financially successful, because it's an extra financial burden. And it is true. It is more of a financial burden, quote unquote, if you want to put it that way. But it hasn't been my experience that it prevents success. In fact, my own career didn't really take off until the moment when I had kids. I really started to take myself a lot more seriously when I was a husband and a father. I mean, I had the responsibility to care for my family, but I also just started to see myself as a grown man in the world, and take myself a lot more seriously. And I think that, especially as a man, that's one of the prerequisites to, being successful is to see yourself as a serious person, which I think a lot of young men probably don't see themselves that way. And then as a consequence, the world doesn't see them that way.
Most young men are quite profligate and hedonistic, let's say, with regard to their consumption of alcohol. And why? Well, because it's fun. People drink to drink away their misery. And there is some truth to that because it is a good respite from anxiety. But mostly people drink to party and have a good time, which means to engage in hedonistic stupidity of various forms. And the reason that people do that is obvious. They do that because the substances like alcohol that people use are physiologically rewarding.
And I just want to focus on myself and have fun. If that's your mentality, there's just no way to be truly happy, except in those fleeting moments that you talk about. But
right, and you'll get more and more desperate to pursue those fleeting moments too. That's the cataclysmic abyss of hedonism, because those will also get more and more rare the more you pursue them. I talked to Jocko Willink. Jocko wanted to be a mayhem distributing soldier from the time he was about 3. Most of the people who are miserable with their kids have no idea how to discipline them. Right. So it's like they're not living with 3 kids. They're living with 3 unhouse trained, stupid attack dogs. And it's no bloody wonder that they're miserable because they're too fragmented and clueless and poorly educated and undisciplined to have any understanding at all what it means to bring your children under some sort of acceptable social order. And so that's a complete catastrophe. I mean, it's obviously the case that dysregulated social relationships can make your life hell. It doesn't take that much. Jesus, how much discipline does it take for a grown man to bring a 3-year-old into alignment? I mean, he's 3. You can probably take him both psychologically and physically. And if you can't, well, then you're a coward fundamentally, or you've had very bad models. In any case, Jocko, when he went off to be the special forces character that he developed into, discovered very quickly that he really liked mentoring and that was way better than just, what would you say, living for the sake of adventurous mayhem. And that was a real profound realization on his part that there wasn't anything better he could find to do with his life, his like monstrous Viking life. Easily could have been a criminal, right? Taken that pathway because he's got that aggressive temperament. He found that there was nothing better that he could find than to mentor young men and that's to adopt that paternal role. There is a deep source of meaning in that. And that's the spirit of the patriarch that's celebrated in the biblical stories. It's part of the manifestation of the spirit of the God of Isaac and Abraham. That long-term paternal focus that's committed and the opposite of idiot hedonism and pride, so which is celebrated for months now in our society at a time.
We talked about, we did the movie, we investigated gender, broadly speaking, is the other big one culturally. And so I knew I wanted to investigate that. The question was like, how do you approach it? And with What is Woman, I mean, the strategy is right there in the title. It's just this one basic question that the whole thing hinges on. Now with race, it's not quite like that. There isn't one. There's a lot of questions. There's not one basic one. It's just it's a different beast in a lot of ways. And so, and we also didn't want to repeat just we didn't want to do what is a woman, but with race. So I think for them, the idea that they might be interviewed by someone who fundamentally disagrees with them was really just like unthinkable. They never even considered the possibility because they're never even around those kinds of people. And we really kind of punctured that bubble, I guess, in making the film.
So the most surprising thing to me, and I don't want to be speaking out of turn here, was the fact that you got to talk to Robin DiAngelo. And Robin DiAngelo famously is the author of White Fragility, which is really one of the most despicable books, I would say, that's ever been written. And I think she also fits into that category as a thinker and likely as a human being.
The fact that she's in the movie is no secret. We have her in the trailer. And,
right.
And that kind of goes to what I just said, that I think for her, she's probably the prime example of this. Because you would think, if you didn't know any better, you would think it'd be difficult to get Robin DiAngelo into a room, and that she'd be looking out for anyone who maybe isn't in her tribe. She'd be looking out for this kind of thing.
For example, because
right.
you might suggest that possibly Robin DiAngelo, if she was even vaguely informed about absolutely anything that she purports to be doing, would know who the hell you are.
And so when I'm sitting across the room with her having a conversation, I mean, it's probably the first time in years, if not ever, that she has, in this case unwittingly, but has found herself sitting in a room with someone who fundamentally disagrees with her about almost everything. And I don't know, these academic leftist types, that's the kind of bubble they're in. For a lot of us, we for me, obviously, because I am conservative and, my family's conservative and I work here at the Daily Wire, most of the people that I'm around are conservative, but, I interact with people that are far left all the time. It's, it would be a lot more difficult for someone on the left to do to me what we did to Robin DiAngelo, because I'm aware that these people are out there. I know who they are. I'm looking out for that kind of thing.
As far as you're concerned,
I think there are several things. Maybe the main thing that I learned, and I don't know if it's learned so much as had illustrated for me, but the extent to which a lot of people that fall for this, there are the people that push it, the Robin DiAngelo types, the women who run the race to dinner, who we have in the film.
Oh yes, that's Sarah Rao. Yeah.
Sarah Rao. Yeah. The DEI.
She's the worst person on Twitter, which is really, or arguably the worst. Every single thing that woman does is self-serving and malevolent to the bloody core. She is a real miracle.
Totally
she
agree.
runs those dinners where the white women pay to be humiliated by two unbelievably narcissistic psychopaths so that they can feel good about themselves without actually having to do any having to put in any of the moral effort.
What I found making the film is that you really can't overstate the guilt that these people are walking around with. White guilt is a very real phenomenon. And I knew that making the movie, but having it illustrated so profoundly was still pretty enlightening to me. That a lot of these people are just, they're walking around with a lot of guilt. And for like a sane, rational white person like myself and you, it can be it's hard to understand, because I've never spent any time feeling guilty about slavery or Jim Crow. I had nothing to do with it.
Well, I understand that there's a fair bit of genuine moral confusion mixed in there, but the self-serving in public, you notice that those women go to those dinners in groups. It's not Sarah Rao and her pathological partner with one woman. They have to do that in groups so they can signal to each other the depths of their moral virtue.
Yeah, I think that's certainly right. There's a certain amount of virtue signaling that goes into it for sure. But if you're in, the race to dinner, just using that again as an example, and that's 7 or 8 minutes in the movie, but in real life, of course, you're making a movie. Especially a movie like this, they take a lot longer to film. And that was really 2 hours. I mean, that dinner went on for 2 hours. You can see these women sitting around at this table at various points, crying, seemingly very much overcome with emotion, talking about their racism that they feel, and given opportunities to talk about examples of when when they committed racist acts, and then they share their examples, and it's like none of the examples they give are actual racism. And yeah, again, some of that is them just showing off, but I do think that at the core of it, there is real guilt here. And and we could spend another 2 hours psychoanalyzing this, but I think my own theory about how they can feel this guilt is that it's a replacement for religion. I mean, almost all of them are irreligious people, even if they would call themselves Christian, they're not really. But if you take religion out of it, well, now you've still got people that are sinning, that are doing evil acts. And so they're still going to feel the guilt because of it, but they don't have a way of understanding that guilt. They don't have any way of interpreting it. And so they look around for someone to tell them what to do with the guilt. And then these race hustlers are there and they'll tell you, I'll tell you why you feel guilty. It's because of this.
Yeah, that's a good analysis.
So I think that's a big part of it.
Well, I think that's a good analysis. I mean, look, when you were a somewhat profligate 24-year-old, you needed to channel the meaninglessness and the guilt that was associated with your unmoored life into something that was properly sacrificial. And you got married and you had kids, and that provides a pathway, where you can discharge your moral duty. That's the thing, is that it's necessary for human beings to discharge their moral duty. Otherwise, they'll be overwhelmed by feelings of inadequacy and self-deprecation. And that's because we are communal and social creatures, and we have to live in relationship to other people. And if we don't do that, we violate our deepest instincts or our most divine calling. And as you said, for the typical person, you find that expiation of your self-centeredness in responsibility to your wife, like long-term committed responsibility, and to your kids and your grandkids, and to that multi-generational endeavor. And the women who run that race to dinner are great examples of that, man. There's something to watch. And hey, let me ask you one more question, Matt. I don't think I could do what you did. And I wonder what that points to in terms of the difference between our temperament. That room that you were in with all those people that, what the hell were they there for? You're in a group of people, and they kind of figure out that you are, in fact, conservative interloper. What was that? What was that scene? Why are you in that room?
That was a group, kind of a seminar for white people that are struggling with their grief, their white grief over their privilege. And so if you're a white person with white privilege and you're grieving your privilege, it's a support group for that. That was kind of where we started the film.